Hi, everyone. You probably know this by now, but be sure to rename yourself with your team letters and your roles. Coaches do the same, and then I'll make the bailiffs co-hosts as well. Hey, Mr. Wall, can I have you rename yourself to Raider-Wall?
What the hell was that for? Are you guys taking screenshots or something?
Oh no, just so everyone could tell who's who.
Oh,
I have no idea.
Do we know when this thing's gonna start?
Once we get a presiding judge in here, we'll be good to go.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Judge Henke.
Hi, Judge Henke. Can you add judge at the beginning of your Zoom name? I can do that for you if you don't know how.
If you would, please, I'm
Absolutely.
really inept on this.
No problem. And then once we got that done, it's your courtroom.
Okay, thank you.
You're good to go.
All right, thank you. And so I just want to make sure we've got 3 raters. So good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you for helping us out this afternoon. And then we have a bailiff. There we go. Okay. Hello.
Hi.
And we have 2 bailiffs. Good. All right. That's what I'm supposed to have. And so is everyone ready? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Judge Drew Henke, and I'm going to be judging your competition this afternoon. And so could the parties introduce themselves, please?
Yes, hello, Your Honor. My name is Rebecca Sorg, and I am lead counsel as a representative of the state. And my co-counsel would like to introduce themselves along with our witnesses in order of their appearance.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I'm Asha Smith, and I'm currently having technology issues with my camera, so it cannot turn on. And I'm representing the state in this case.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Lushay Brown, and I am representing the state in this case.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Georgia Kerr. I use she, her pronouns, and I am playing Meryl Grimm.
I'm sorry, your name again
Good
was? I'm sorry.
Georgia Kerr.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Jenna Capolito, and I'll be playing Wesley Everett.
Hello, my name is Mackenzie Cavertis, and I will be playing Detective Jan Brandberg.
Hello, Your Honor. My name is Adeline Coggins. I use she, her pronouns, and I will be playing Del Hubbard.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ryan Morrell, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent the defendant, Tracy Whitney.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Priya Kara.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Kenay Yod. I'm an attorney for the defense. The witnesses will now present themselves in order of appearance.
Good afternoon. My name is Sky Levy Davidson, but today I'll be playing A. Lynn Strong.
Good afternoon. I'm Marcus Sanchez, and today I'll be playing Britt Smithson.
My name is Owen Odegaard, and today I'll be playing Professor Robin Hess.
Good afternoon. My name is Ian Chung, but today I will be playing Tracy Whitney.
All right, thank you. And so are there any preliminary matters that we need to address?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. So we just wanted to confirm that time will be stopped for any and all objections today.
Yes, I believe that the bailiffs understand the rules and will follow them.
Thank you. Yes. And we also just wanted to make sure that if somebody were to be having a Zoom error, as if they weren't being heard or we couldn't hear them, that time would also be stopped.
Yes.
And then we also just ask for a 5-minute recess between prosecution and defense and a 5-minute recess before closing arguments.
Yes, that's reasonable. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's all we had.
Anything from the defense?
Just one thing from the defense. Today we'll be using Zoom's screen share function to share and display exhibits. And this means that the jury will be able to view these exhibits before they have been admitted into evidence. So we ask that the jury not be instructed not to consider anything on these exhibits until they are admitted.
All right. And certainly that would be reasonable. I'm assuming that Well, yes, I agree with that. Does the state have any objection to that request?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. All right, and so I believe then we have a pretrial motion. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor, is the defense's motion.
All right, you can proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, today's case focuses on the alleged assault of a groundskeeper during a demonstration on September 16th, 2019, protesting a historical statue in Barrington, Washington. The assailant, Wesley Everett, was part of the Barrington chapter of an organization called Debunking Mystery that works to remove statues in public places. My client, the defendant, Tracy Whitney, heads Debunking Mystery as a whole, which has 100 affiliates worldwide. Mr. Britt Smithson heads the Barrington chapter of the organization. The defense moves to exclude all evidence of all alleged statements made by Mr. Smithson during a video conference call on August 22nd, 2019, that included Mr. Whitney, Mr. Smithson, and the assailant, Wesley Everett, among others. Those statements by Smithson are inadmissible hearsay under Rules 801 and 802. We anticipate the prosecution to contend that Smithson's statements are admissible against Whitney as either adoptive admissions or co-conspirator statements. First, Mr. Smithson's statements are not adoptive admissions by Whitney. Whitney did not manifest an adoption or belief in the truth of Smithson's statements. Under State v. Neslin, there are two ways a party opponent can manifest the adoption of a statement: in either words and gestures, or, under certain circumstances, complete silence. Manifesting adoption by words means accepting or acquiescing a declarant's statements. Today at trial, Wesley Everett will testify that after Smithson concluded speaking, Whitney said, "Thanks for that report, Britt. Very interesting." That statement is clipped, and immediately thereafter, Whitney thanks Smithson and moved them right along to the next agenda item. Under State v. Hill, that statement is a deflection, not acquiescence. Likewise, Whitney's silence does not constitute adoption. Under Hill, there are three things the prosecution must show: that the defendant heard the statements, he was able to respond, and it's reasonable to conclude he would have responded had there been no intention to acquiesce. Prosecution cannot show this third prong because my client had no obligation to respond. Under State v. McCaughey, a defendant does not have to respond to a declarant's statements unless obligated to do so. Since Smithson's statements didn't accuse Whitney of a crime or blame him for committing one, there was no obligation for Whitney to respond. Finally, Britt Smithson's statements are not admissible under the co-conspirator rule, or 801D2E. The prosecution needs to prove the existence of a conspiracy by a preponderance. That is their burden. It's higher than any other subpart of 801D. Under Anderson and Miller, the state must make a prima facie showing of a conspiracy, show that the conspiracy existed when the statements were made, show that those statements were made in furtherance of that conspiracy, and show that both the declarant, Smithson, and the defendant, Whitney, were engaged in that conspiracy. The state cannot point to any independent evidence of Smithson's statements to show his involvement. Therefore, the state is bootstrapping here, and the co-conspirator rule does not apply. For these reasons, we ask the court to grant our motion to exclude all evidence of all alleged statements made by Mr. Smithson during the August 22nd video conference. Thank you.
And so, I'm sorry, I had a question about when you talk about the acquiescence, that it was not an acquiescence, but a deflection. And so can you tell me what the difference is between the two?
Yes, Your Honor. An acquiescence means to accept somebody's statements, which means almost approving it in a way. Like if somebody were to talk to you and you said, yes, that's true, you're acquiescing that statement and accepting it as your own because you responded directly to it. Whereas a deflection is a deviation from path. And as shown by Mr. Whitney's statements, he said, "Thanks for that report, Britt. Very interesting." It was clipped and he half-mindedly said it since he had other things to get to. He just wanted to move on from Smithson's speech and move along. Therefore, it was a deflection.
And so you don't think that by just moving along, instead of saying something like, I don't know what you're talking about, or I don't agree with you, that he was affirming what Mr. Smithson said?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I don't quite understand your question. Could you please re-ask it?
So by his actions, moving along and not saying, not making any kind of comment about it, you're saying that that's a reflection or a deflection rather than acquiescence?
Yes, that is what I am asserting. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
And the state's response?
Good afternoon. Your Honor, this recorded interview should be admitted because it is not hearsay. Under Evidence Rule 801 D2, if a statement is offered against an opposing party and was made by someone who was a representative of the party and was made by the party's co-conspirator during the furtherance of the conspiracy, it is not considered hearsay. It is relevant and thus should be admitted by the court. Here, Tracy Whitney called for the video conference to occur to analyze the result of the fourth protest and to discuss the next moves. During this video conference call, Tracy said physical effort must have a purpose and achieve a goal. Tracy called this meeting with the intent to conspire with Britt Smithson for the violent removal of the statue. This is clear evidence of Tracy conspiring with Britt Smithson to commit the crime of malicious mischief. There is also evidence that Tracy committed the crime of criminal conspiracy to commit assault because she said unfocused physical pushing and shoving without any tangible result is not helpful to the demerit cause. This is nothing less than an acceptance and approval of physical violence, thus implying that pushing and shoving in the next protest must have tangible results. Here, Smithson's statement furthered the conspiracy because he said to Tracy Whitney, Wesley Everett, and others that they needed to focus on results in getting the statue removed. In State versus Israel, one of the defendants met with a co-conspirator and bragged about a prior burglary, where they scored a lot of cash and jewelry, and how they were moving in the direction of getting bigger and more profitable robberies. The court found that these statements were made in furtherance of the crime and were made to inform and boast the conspiracy's progress, and to let the co-conspirators know that the conspiracy was still operating and to encourage participation. This is what Britt Smithson did here in our case. Here, Britt Smithson spoke to other co-conspirators about the successful removal of the statue in Australia and how they were moving in the direction to bring down the statue here. These statements were clearly made to encourage others and were substantial steps made in furtherance to conspire to commit the crimes of assault and malicious mischief. Also in State versus Israel, the Court of Appeals Division 1 acknowledged that the in furtherance requirement should be interpreted broadly by the courts. This court should do the same. A statement merely meant to further participation in the conspiracy or to inform a co-conspirator about the status of the conspiracy is sufficient to establish the in furtherance of the conspiracy requirement. Here, Britt Smithson and Tracy Whitney acted together in furtherance of the crime to commit assault and malicious mischief through discussing next steps to organize for the violent removal of the statue. We respectfully ask this court to admit this evidence.
And so did anyone during this conference talk about specific malicious mischief or assault?
Yes. Britt Smithson talked about the removal of the Alton-Berry statue and the harm and to harm anyone that gets in the way. And then Smithson's statements were about committing assault and vandalism, and Tracy Whitney adopted these statements.
And so how did Ms. Whitney adopt those statements?
Tracy was the one who called for the meeting and invited Britt Smithson, and Tracy hyped up everything at the beginning of the video conference call by stating physical efforts and statue removals must be done with a purpose to achieve a goal. And in addition, of course, Tracy agreed and accepted Britt's statements because the statements were consistent with Demite philosophy, which Tracy knows and upholds to the fullest. This is how these statements were in furtherance of the conspiracy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and so does the defense have any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Thank you. Listening to the prosecution speech, there was a mention of State v. Israel, but it must be clarified that in that case, it was established that casual retrospective statements of the past in the form of pep talks towards a wide group are not made in furtherance of a conspiracy. Britt Smithson directed his statements to the entire party who was at the video conference, not just Tracy Whitney. And in terms of statements used to induce participation, it has to be shown that it was to induce the participation of Whitney alone, as a conspiracy needs to be established between Whitney and Smithson. But Britt Smithson was talking to everybody at that meeting in a casual, retrospective way, talking about things that happened in the past, and therefore his statements do not further any alleged conspiracy that the prosecution is trying to show.
All right, and I'm sorry, you said that the statements had to be directed specifically to Ms. Whitney only?
I think I'll walk that back, but they do need to be in. These statements need to be induced these statements need to be made to induce the participation in a conspiracy, but Britt Smithson's statements were just casual retrospective statements of the past and talking about past events. That was just in a form of pep talk. So there was no inducing of participation.
Thank you. And any rebuttal by the prosecution?
She did not correct or disagree with Smithson. She adopted the statements through acquiescence.
Okay. And all right, so at this time, I am going to deny the motion to exclude the statements. I do think that that Ms. Whitney did acquiesce by her silence, and I think that the state has shown that there was a conspiracy by Ms. Whitney calling the group together, and also by being the first speaker and getting everyone in what's a good way to say it? Getting them revved up and starting to get excited about the possibility of another action being taken. All right. So then at this time, are the parties ready for opening statements? And so the prosecution can proceed with their opening statement, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name is Asha Smith, and I am one of the attorneys representing the state in this case. On September 16, 2019, the defendant in this case, Tracy Whitney, intentionally assaulted Dell Hubbard and caused physical damage to property exceeding the amount of $5,000, agreed with and engaged in committing a crime, and had the intent to do so. The defendant also encourages a group of people to act unlawfully. At the conclusion of the case, we will ask for a verdict of guilty. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a defendant who had become a puppet master. The defendant, Tracy Whitney, is great at manipulating people into committing crimes and not being able to admit or be responsible for their actions. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant, Tracy Whitney, was not a caring, involved member of society, but but in fact a woman of destruction. She pulled the strings to manipulate innocent people, such as Wesley Everett, and causes them to act unlawfully. The witnesses will all state that it was the defendant who planned this event and the taking down of the statue that caused so much damage to the town, and then put the blame on Wesley Everett. The prosecution will call 4 witnesses to the stand, and they will tell you that Tracy Whitney hid behind Wesley Everett and pulled the strings that made them act unlawfully. We will call the mayor of Barryton, who will explain that they are just trying to take care of their community. They'll tell you how DMIT caused damage to their town, and they're now stuck trying to clean it up. They also will tell you about all the background of Barryton. A mayor who cares for their town will explain how they were harassed in the planning of taking down the statue. Next, we will call on Del Hubbard, who will tell you how she was planning, we will call on Del Hubbard, who will tell you how she was assaulted while just trying to do her job. She will tell you about all the damage DMIT caused her and how they ruined her life. Then we will call Wesley Everett to tell you how they just wanted to be a part of a group that studied history. Wesley will explain how they simply followed the commands of a puppet master, which led them to the event that ruined Del Hubbard's life forever. And finally, we'll call Detective Jaden Brandberg to explain the coded messaging systems and express their opinion about the harmful phrases such as energetic tango. These witnesses will show you that Tracy Whitney is a danger to the community and does nothing but cause damage. Tracy Whitney pulled at their strings and caused them to commit crimes. At the conclusion of this case, we'll ask you find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. And the defense, opening statement. Please.
Yes, Your Honor. Gentlemen of the jury, today we are here because Tracy Whitney, founder of the organization known as Debunking Mystery, is being blamed and charged for the actions of a single member of his organization. In the summer of 2019, the organization Debunking Mystery, or DMIT for short, held a handful of protests and meetings regarding a statue of Alton Berry residing in front of Barryton City Hall. Calling for its removal and demanding action, the Barryton DMIT chapter held protests, meetings, and sent letters to the mayor about this statue. Now, all of these actions were taken peacefully and legally until September 16th of 2019, where a protest regarding the statue turned violent and dangerous. After several lively speeches, a member of the Barryton DMIT chapter took a sledgehammer and hit the statue several times. Now, this member was Wesley Everett. When he did this, he broke off the statue's arm and lost his balance. When this happened, he accidentally hit the groundskeeper, Del Hubbard, severely injuring him. Now, Everett claims this was a planned effort by the DMIT organization, planned by what he calls the inner circle of his local DMIT chapter. He claims that Tracy Whitney, along with the other inner circle members, planned this attack and put him up to his crimes. But the evidence that we will present today will show that Everett acted alone and that Tracy Whitney had no knowledge that Everett wanted to attack the statue. Wesley Everett went rogue. Whitney was thousands of miles away that day, and testimony will show that he is in no way responsible for the actions of Wesley Everett. It was the head of the local DMIT chapter, Britt Smithson, who planned the Barryton protest. But when Wesley Everett went rogue, he was the one that turned it violent. Now, a reporter for the Barryton Standard and eyewitness to these events, A. Lynn Strong, will testify that everyone at the protest, including Britt Smithson, who had planned it, was shocked by Everett's actions. Britt Smithson himself will testify that the so-called inner circle that supposedly planned these violent and criminal actions had never existed in the first place, and that Wesley Everett acted spontaneously and alone, shocking everyone with his actions. You will also hear from law professor Robin Hess, who will testify about the statements made by Tracy Whitney. He will explain to you how the First Amendment protects my client's speeches, emails, and texts. Now listen carefully to Tracy Whitney's statements, and remember that if there is no imminence, there can be no conspiracy. Finally, you will hear from the defendant, Tracy Whitney, who will show you how he wasn't involved in any part of the planning, protesting, or crimes of Wesley Everett. The prosecution will try to tell you that Tracy Whitney supported and incited these actions, but when investigations began, you will see that the lead detective relied exclusively upon the statements of Wesley Everett to build his case. This is the same Wesley Everett who will admit today that he has a plea deal riding on his testimony. Now, as to the supposed code phrase, energetic tango, you will hear from multiple people today that this is nothing more than an inside joke made to mock the founder of DMIT, Tracy Whitney. In today's case, the defense does not have the burden of proof. By contrast, the state has the burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Tracy Whitney is guilty. So I ask you to look for yourself. Look closely at the state's case, and you will see all the reasons for doubt. You'll see that Wesley Everett went rogue, and you will see that Wesley Everett is only trying to lessen the sentence for his own crimes. And you will see that Tracy Whitney has only given protected speech that is lawful. Now, at the end of today's case, my co-counsel will ask you to return a verdict of not guilty on all charges. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And the plaintiff can present its first witness, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. The state would like to call Merrill Grimm to the stand.
And Ms. Grimm, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And prosecution?
Thank you, Your Honor. Hello, Ms. Grimm. Can you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Of course. Merrill Grimm, Grimm.
And Ms. Grimm, what do you do for a living?
I am the mayor of Barryton.
And where does your job take place?
Barryton, of course, which is part of Pine County, Washington.
And what qualifications do you have for your career?
Well, on top of a family history of public service, my great-grandfather actually founded this town. I have the support of the people I serve.
And who was your great-grandfather?
His name was Alton Berry, hence the name Barryton.
And what were his accomplishments?
Well, I may be biased in saying this, but I believe his most important accomplishment was, of course, the founding of the town that I now lead.
And now let's move on to the case. How are you involved?
Well, I felt it necessary to become involved right around the time I felt that DMIT began threatening not only my great-grandfather's legacy, but also the integrity of the people I serve.
And what did you know prior about the DMIT organization in your town?
Really nothing. I'd never heard the name Tracy Whitney or really anything about the organization as a whole.
And who is Tracy Whitney?
He is the founder of DMIT.
And do you believe Tracy Whitney will be testifying here today?
I believe so, yes.
And did you know of any other DMIT members?
The only one I knew of previously was Britt Smithson. I'd worked with them on some construction contracts.
And what was your relationship with Smithson like?
At first, I would say it was purely professional. We really did just work on those contracts.
At first, how did this relationship change?
Well, frankly, right around the time they became involved with DMIT, I would say the relationship really took a turn for the worse.
And did you at any point become involved with DMIT?
Yes, unfortunately, they began harassing me. So.
And how did they harass you?
Through email, phone calls. Those happened at all hours of the day. You start to wonder if these people sleep, but yeah.
And how did those harassments make you feel?
Not good, of course. In my line of work, I'm not unfamiliar with people disagreeing with me, but I would say this felt on a level I've never experienced before, and it definitely made me feel unsafe.
And were there any other forms of harassment?
Not that I can think of. There were some posters, I believe, as part of the emails.
And I would now like to ask the bailiff to screen share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 3. Thank you. And I am now showing all parties what has been previously marked as Exhibit 3. And Ms. Grimm, do you recognize this document?
I do, yes.
What is this document?
That is one of the posters that was sent to me.
And how do you recognize the document?
It was sent to me as part of the email harassments.
Your Honor, the state offers Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection by defense?
No, Your Honor.
Exhibit 3 will be admitted. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, permission published to the jury as well.
Yes.
Thank you. And you may stop screen sharing, bailiff. And what happened with Demet after the harassment?
That is when the protests started.
And did you attend any of these protests?
I did, yes. I attended the first bit of the 4th protest.
And do you know what happened at the final protest in September of 2019?
Not specifically, though. I was there for the aftermath.
And where did this protest take place?
Outside of City Hall, which is located in Pine County, Washington.
And what did you see when you went after the protest?
That's when I saw, again, the aftermath. I saw Del Hubbard. It looked like they were on the ground bleeding. They didn't look good. And I saw Wesley Everett in police custody.
And was anyone else present?
Not that I saw, though. Honestly, at that point, anyone of importance probably would have already fled the scene, if you will.
And how has this incident affected your city?
Well, just off the bat, we have removed the statue for safety purposes, and to reinstall that, it will be around $10,000, which is, of course, not something we're really looking forward to paying. But on top of that, I've also noticed it's affected community morale. I know I've been feeling it, and a lot of other members of our community have too.
Yes, thank you. And is there a future plan for the statue?
Yes. We are definitely, I am at least definitely looking to show my community that we will not let these people win.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. And cross-examined by defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Mayor Grimm, I would like to start off by talking about Barrington's council meetings. You attend council meetings, don't you?
I do, yes.
And Britt Smithson attended quite a few of these meetings as well, didn't he?
He did, yes, and he made himself very vocal and known. So,
and he was accompanied by a few others.
That is correct. Yes, again, they made themselves very known at these council meetings.
And these council meetings occurred in early spring of 2019, right?
That is correct, yes.
And they came to voice concerns about the Alton-Berry statue.
Yes.
But Tracy Whitney wasn't at any of these meetings, right?
No, not specifically that I saw, though I believe at some of the later ones there may have been a broadcasting thing maybe that I saw. Yeah, but no, not specifically.
So at the council meetings with you, Tracy Whitney was not present.
That is what I said, yes.
In fact, it wasn't actually until April 2019 that you first heard the name Tracy Whitney.
That is correct, as I mentioned previously.
Now, Mayor Grimm, there are many legal and lawful ways in which a citizen of Barrington can express ideas and concerns, correct?
Of course, the citizens' opinions are, of course, very important to me. I always take them into consideration and review all proposals very thoroughly. So.
One of these legal methods to express ideas and concerns and opinions, like you just mentioned, is attending council meetings.
Yes, that is generally what they're for. So.
Britt Smithson and others attended council meetings, didn't they?
Yes, didn't we just cover that?
Another legal action one may take is to, let's say, write a letter.
Yes, I believe this group did that. They wrote a proposal that I reviewed very extensively and ultimately decided was not the course of action my community was going to take.
And in fact, Britt Smithson and you received a letter from DMITE, didn't you?
Yes, as I just mentioned.
A third legal method is to, let's say, schedule a meeting.
Yes.
In fact, Britt Smithson scheduled a meeting with you.
Yes, I really did, when I first got the schedule, think it was about the construction contracts that I mentioned, but then he showed up and apparently it was not. So,
Mayor Grimm, one could also hold a legal demonstration, right?
yes.
DMI also held several legal demonstrations.
In front of the city council hall, yes, though we did find them disruptive towards the end. We were having a hard time getting to our offices. So.
They were legal, yes?
Yes, until the last one, of course.
Finally, a legal way to express ideas is to give speeches.
That is true, yes.
And at these demonstrations, DMITE members gave speeches.
That is correct, yes.
Briefly, let's talk about September 16th. There was a protest that day, wasn't there?
Yes, there was, as we're here today to discuss that.
However, you weren't at that protest, were you?
No, I just came out afterwards. I saw the aftermath, as I mentioned.
So you don't know exactly what happened?
No, but I did see the aftermath, as I've mentioned previously. I saw a Mr. Del Hubbard on the ground. It looked like they were bleeding. They didn't look good. And a Wesley Everett in police custody.
You saw the aftermath. You didn't see what happened at the demonstration.
That is what I've said previously, yes. And I just said.
And finally, you didn't hear any speeches.
No, as you just said, I was in my office. I just saw the aftermath. So.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Grimm, for your time here today. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect by the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Mayor Grimm, do you mind explaining how you dealt with DMIT's formal requests for statue removal?
Yes, I did review them very extensively. Of course, community opinion is very important to me, and I ultimately decided that it was not the best course of action for my community to take at that time.
And can you also describe why you found an issue with where DMIT was protesting outside of City Hall?
Yes, they did become very disruptive, and many of us had a hard time getting to office. They were right in front of where we were supposed to enter. So,
thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
And any recross?
Yes, Your Honor. Mayor Grimm, you asked traffic officials to redirect traffic through the plaza during the protest, correct?
Yes.
But you were denied this because they labeled these demonstrations as peaceful.
Yes, but that doesn't change the fact that we couldn't get to our offices. So, and of course, that would be a concern. I do.
You were told that they were peaceful and that they could continue to happen in front of the town, in front of the building.
Yes, I objected to them before that when I had a hard time getting to my office to do the necessary work for my job.
Thank you, Mayor Grimm. No further questions.
All right, thank you. And the prosecution can call its next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The state called Wesley Everett.
And Ms. Everett, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And prosecution?
Please state your name and spell your last.
Wesley Everett, E-V-E-R-E-T-T.
And what do you do for a living?
Oh, I'm a video game designer. I work at a gaming firm in Alki City, Washington.
And are you familiar with DMIT?
Yes, I am. I ended up joining them kind of to find a hobby and everything back in like 2018.
Was there anything you didn't like about the group?
No, not at first. The people I met were like really open and friendly.
It was just pretty good. We could have interesting discussions.
Who ran this group?
Oh, Britt Smithson. Yeah.
Did you like Britt?
Yeah, they seemed to like really value what I had to say. They backed me up and they invited me into their inner circle.
What is the inner circle?
Pretty much a group that would go out afterwards and have drinks and talk about things like more than we had in the group.
What happened after you were invited into the inner circle?
Pretty much I was introduced to debunking this story that was run by Tracy. I was giving Miss Whitney or Mr. Whitney's contact information where we started chatting directly.
Did you ever have any trouble while communicating with Whitney?
No trouble. A big red flag should have probably been how they had a bunch of encrypted messaging and everything. I just kind of thought that they were being a bit paranoid, but then kind of what we started to talk about took a bit of a darker turn, and I realized it was probably for plausible deniability.
Objection, legal conclusion.
Response by the state.
What was the objection?
Legal conclusion.
Any response by the state?
I'll leave it to the jury.
All right, so I'm going to overrule the objection. I believe that's Miss the witness's personal opinion. So go ahead.
Should I re-ask the question?
Yes.
No, I'm okay. Oh, sorry. Never mind. Yes.
Go ahead.
What was that dark turn?
Just like through the conversations we were having, I got the impression that Whitney was, willing to go to extreme ends to reach their goals.
Why was that a dark turn to you?
Just because, to me that kind of, well, at the time I just really wanted to be a part of something big, but hindsight is 2020, and looking back, it seems like I should have realized how they were willing to go to violent means.
Thank you. Let's move on a bit. What happened in April of 2019?
That was when Britt and other people in DMIT felt like it was time to address the Alton Berry statue.
And what happened?
Sorry,
what was that?
Oh, I said, and just, work to get it removed.
What happened after you decided to take action with Alton Berry statue?
Pretty much we provided, like a manifesto of some sorts to the mayor, and then, well, I wasn't a part of that, but that's what Britt and Whitney and a few other members did.
What were your interactions with the mayor if you weren't involved?
Oh, pretty much, I would send them a bunch of like text messages and emails and stuff to kind of bug them using I kind of cover up my tracks. So it would seem like there was a bunch of different people that really cared about the issue, because I just wanted the mayor to see how insistent we were or how important it felt, I guess.
Who suggested you cover your tracks?
Oh, that was Tracy Whitney.
And did you ever attend any meetings in August?
Objection, leading question.
Yes, I did.
I'm sorry, what was the objection?
A leading question.
And prosecution response? I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? And
I said, did you ever attend any meetings in August?
okay. And so defense is saying that that's a leading question. So what's your response to that?
I can rephrase.
Okay, go ahead.
Were you ever part? Sorry, I'll move on to the next question.
Okay.
What started happening in August of 2019?
Pretty much that was when we started having, like kind of frequent, video calls and such talking about different things. It was kind of when I felt like Britt and Whitney were kind of, ramping things up in not the best way.
And on topic of ramping things up, what happened on September 16th?
That was the final protest, and I got the, leading role as a speaker, but that was also when Tracy Whitney gave the whole energetic tango thing, like the go-ahead.
And what does that phrase mean?
It was pretty much a call to action to take down the statue no matter what.
And what happened when you went to take the statue down?
I was given a hammer by Britt Smithson, and I went to go and hit the statue.
What happened after hitting the statue?
I kind of expected the statue to come down in pieces, but with just one or two smacks, the arm just came clean off. And it really surprised me. I became really unbalanced. The hammer's kind of big and I'm pretty small, and I dropped it.
Where did the hammer land?
It landed on top of Del Hubbard. And I mean, there's no apologies I can make that would repair the damage that I did to them. But I'm truly remorseful and I'm responsible for my own actions. But I was just trying to, do something, make a change, but I never intended to hurt someone like that.
So what were your intentions while hitting the statue?
I wanted to take it down, just make a change, do something. I realized that violence would happen. Somebody would get hurt with the way that I took Britt and Tracy to be acting, but I didn't, and yeah.
Who organized this event of taking down the statue?
It was Tracy and Britt. They proposed the idea and, that kind of stuff. That they'd be willing to take the statue down, whatever means. Sorry.
I'm sorry, was there an objection? No?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm just hearing some background noise, sorry. Go ahead.
And what was the aftermath?
Pretty much as soon as Del Hubbard got hurt, everybody else scattered, and I was left with all the blame. And I mean, I should have realized that this is kind of Demet style, that I was just a, puppet being used or whatever.
Improper character evidence.
Any response by the prosecutor?
No response. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And cross-examination, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Miss Everett, excuse me. You've been a member of Demet since 2018, right?
Yes.
And during this time, you've met quite a few people.
Yeah.
And one of these people was Britt Smithson.
Indeed.
You've been friends with Britt Smithson since you first joined Demet.
Yeah, or at least I thought that we were friends. They just kind of seemed to care about what I had to say, and that meant a lot.
But while you were part of Demet, you considered Britt a friend.
Yes.
Ms. Everett, on direct, you mentioned that you mentioned the phrase energetic tango, didn't you?
I did.
And according to you, this was your call to action?
Yes. That's what yeah.
But you know that Mr. Whitney hates this phrase, don't you?
Well, I feel like Whitney hates it to be, publicly known.
In email communications with Mr. Whitney, you've used this phrase, haven't you?
Yes, yeah.
And he's told you to never say it in front of him.
Yeah, because again, it's much more of kind of like a code word, and yeah.
But he's also told you that he hates this phrase.
Hates it being said in public, yes.
But he's also told you that he personally hates this phrase in general, has he not?
If you want to take it that way.
All right, let's move on to the protest. At the end of the protest on September 16th, you claim that Britt Smithson handed you a sledgehammer.
Yes.
And with that hammer, you hopped up onto the statue's base.
Indeed.
And you hit the statue 3 times.
Yes.
And when you hit it the 3rd time, the arm broke off.
It did.
And this arm hit Del Hubbard, who was standing just below.
It did.
And when this happened, you lost your balance.
I did.
And you accidentally dropped the hammer onto Del Hubbard's head.
Yes.
But you didn't mean to hit Del Hubbard.
No, that wasn't my intention.
Exactly. It was never your intention to hurt Del Hubbard, was it?
Not personally, no.
But nevertheless, you've pled guilty to your criminal charges from this protest, haven't you?
Yes. What I did is still not forgivable.
However, your own trial has been postponed until after your testimony today.
Yes.
So you won't be sentenced to anything until after you testify today.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. And so the prosecution, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, can I have a redirect on this witness?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you can.
Thank you. On your cross-examination, you were asked about the phrase energetic tango. What does that phrase mean?
Well, I was told that it meant that it was time to take that statue down.
Objection, evidence based on hearsay.
Response by the prosecutor.
This isn't offered for the truth of the matter.
All right, and I agree with that. So you can answer the question.
I just understood it to mean it was time to, take the statue down.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect by defense? Recross, I'm sorry.
None, Your Honor.
All right, so now the prosecutor can ask or call the next witness.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls Detective Jada Brandberg to the stand.
And Detective, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
How long have you been an officer?
For 20 years.
What training and experience have you received to become an officer?
I went to Jacksonville, Illinois, and obtained a criminal justice degree. I served 3 years as a general officer, then recruited to join an elite unit of the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency.
Was there any special training you had in the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency?
I received special training in the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency in regards to deciphering coded language that drug traffickers use when making connections with suppliers and customers on the phone.
Do you have experience in investigating criminal conspiracies?
Yes.
Did you conduct an investigation of DMIT?
Yes, I organized a team to investigate.
And what did you learn from your investigation?
Some DMIT chapters had called for removal of statues for historically important figures, and the organization has been successful in damaging statues. DMIT demonstrations have ended in vandalism and personal injury. In fact, a private security guard in Australia was severely wounded in the incident.
What did you do next in your investigation?
I had spoke with Wesley Everett, the person arrested from the protest.
What did you learn from speaking with Wesley?
He made the following statement to me: I didn't act alone. It wasn't even my idea. This whole thing was Whitney's.
Objection, hearsay.
Response by the prosecution.
Your Honor, it is not hearsay because it is a statement against a party opponent. Wesley Everett is a co-conspirator with Tracy Whitney. Thus his statements are furtherance of the conspiracy to commit assault and malicious mischief, and thus should be admissible.
If I may respond, Your Honor.
Yes.
The prosecution has not laid the proper foundation to admit this as a co-conspirator statement, as they have not shown that this took place during the course of the conspiracy. They have not shown that this is in furtherance of the conspiracy, and they have not shown that the members in this conversation are parts of the conspiracy.
So I'm going to sustain the objection. Ms. Brown, if you can show lay a proper foundation, go ahead.
I'll just move to the next question.
All right.
What did you do next in your investigation?
I had obtained a search warrant for the records of the internet company Wesley Everett said he used to communicate with Tracy Whitney.
Did you seize anything from your search warrant?
Yes.
Now I ask the bailiff to show Exhibit 5 on screen share. Detective, what is this exhibit?
This is messages seized from a search warrant from Tracy Whitney.
Detective, I'm now directing your attention to page 2 of the exhibit. What are we looking at?
These are the messages from the search warrant I had made.
Have these messages been altered since you last saw them?
No, they have not.
Your Honor, prosecution moves to admit.
Any objection by defense?
No objections.
Permission to publish.
So exhibit number 5 will be admitted and published to the jury.
What is the date found on the top left-hand corner?
September 15th, 2019.
And what date did the crimes by Tracy Whitney in question here occur?
September 16th, 2019.
So this email was sent one day prior to the case we are here for today?
Yes, it was.
Detective, can you read on this page the box on the top right?
Are you ready to bring the hammer down tomorrow?
Based on your training and experience decoding secret messages, what did this message, "Are you ready to bring down the hammer tomorrow," mean to you?
This means that they are ready to cause destruction, violence, and physical damage in order to achieve their objective to take down the statue.
Bailiff, I now ask you to share screen and show Exhibit 2. Detective, what is this?
This is a direct copy and paste from a portion of the DMIT website that I made.
Have these messages been altered since you last seen them?
No, they have not.
Your Honor, the state moves to admit.
Any objection from defense?
None, Your Honor.
Permission to publish?
Yes, so I will admit exhibit number 2 and publish to the jury.
Bailiff, please turn to page 2 of this exhibit. Detective, please read the part under the Our Mission section.
We have one goal, one overriding purpose for our existence as an organization: the removal of all statues and monuments from public spaces, period.
Now read the last sentence of the Our Mission statement.
Anyone defending the blockhouse when they are invaded and destroyed must be swept aside as well.
Objection, these past two statements have been hearsay.
And response by the prosecution?
Your Honor, this is not hearsay because it comes from the statement.
Well, I think the defense is saying that the statement is hearsay. Is that correct?
No, because these are things being said by the party opponent.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes.
I was under the impression that this was the DMIT website, and therefore these are statements made by the DMIT or made by DMIT, which is not the party here.
Any response to that, Ms. Brown?
No, Your Honor.
All right, then I will sustain the, this, I believe this exhibit has already been admitted.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes.
This is an objection to the past two questions and a motion to strike those past two questions, not this exhibit as a whole.
Okay. All right, well, since the exhibit has been admitted, the statements are admissible as well. So I'm going to overrule the objection. Ms. Brown, you may continue.
What does this mean to you based on your training and experience?
This last sentence means that people who stand in the way during the statue removal of this organization will be harmed.
So, Detective, this is a mission statement from the website Tracy Whitney was using to communicate with Wesley Everett?
Yes, it is.
Last bailiff, can you please share screen Exhibit 4? Detective, what is this?
These are emails from Tracy Whitney and Wesley Everett.
Have these messages been altered since you last seen them?
No.
Your Honor, prosecution moves to admit.
And any objection by defense?
Will now object to hearsay here as these statements are out of court statements.
All right.
May I respond?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor, these are emails from the party opponent.
All right, and are they being offered for the truth of the matter asserted?
Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. I apologize.
All right, so I'm going to allow the admission of exhibit number 4.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is there anything significant about these emails, Detective?
Yes, Tracy Whitney's email is at dmit.org.
What does this mean to you?
That Tracy Whitney is clearly involved in the DMIT organization because she is a registered domain user.
Please read the sentence in the middle of the page that starts with "have patience."
Have patience to win and be willing to sacrifice yourself and others if necessary.
Based on your training and experience, what do you interpret the phrase "willing to sacrifice others" to mean?
That Tracy Whitney conspired with Wesley Everett to commit a crime and took steps to explain that it would be carried out at the sacrifice of others if necessary.
Did you use your training and experience to decode and analyze these messages from training?
Yes, I did.
Based on your experience as an expert in the field of decoding messages, what did you learn?
That Tracy Whitney routinely attempted to communicate the need for direct violent action to group members through the use of coded language.
Thank you, Detective Brandberg. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. And so as cross-examination by defense, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Detective Brandberg, on direct, you mentioned that you have worked with decoding for a while, haven't you?
Yes.
But this experience came from working with the Drug Enforcement Agency.
Yes, it was.
So you decoded calls and messages from drug traffickers.
Yes, that was my job.
But today's case doesn't deal with drug trafficking, does it?
No, but it deals with coded language.
My question wasn't about the coded language, it was about drug traffickers, and there are none in this case, are there?
No.
But it does deal with the chapter of a history activist organization.
Yes.
And you've never worked with a history activist organization, have you?
No, I have not.
But do you believe that this history activist organization has a couple important code phrases?
I do.
And one of the more important of these code phrases is energetic tango, isn't it?
Yes, energetic tango, classic criminal coding.
Now, you were able to access some emails between Wesley Everett and Tracy Whitney, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
And in one of these emails, Wesley Everett uses that phrase.
Yes.
But Tracy Whitney responds by saying he hates that phrase, doesn't he?
Objection.
And what's the objection?
Hearsay.
If I may, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, this is a present sense impression, as Wesley Everett used the phrase energetic tango, and Tracy Whitney responded by saying he hates it.
And I'm sorry, was that in the exhibit?
This was in the exhibit, it was in the exhibit of the emails, exhibit 4. However, I'm just referencing a single conversation that they had.
And I'm sorry, you're referencing something that was specifically stated in the exhibit or a different conversation?
It's specifically stated in exhibit 4, yes.
All right.
Your Honor.
Yes, Ms. Brown.
This is also beyond the scope because I did not bring up that in my questioning.
All right, I am going to allow it because it is part of an exhibit that has been admitted. So Detective, if you remember the question, please answer it. Otherwise, I'll ask defense to restate the question.
I can restate it for you, Detective. Tracy Whitney says he hates the phrase energetic tango, doesn't he?
He did, yes.
Objection.
Is that a different objection?
Your Honor, I did not bring up energetic tango in my direct.
And I'm going to allow the question and answer to stand.
Moving on to the discussions of the inner circle that you've had with Wesley Everett. You weren't able to find much about DMIT until you talked to Wesley Everett, were you?
Yes.
And when you talked to Everett, he mentioned something called the inner circle.
He did.
He even gave you some supposed names of this inner circle members.
Yes.
And you were able to track a couple of these people down.
Yep.
But none of them gave you any useful information, did they?
Objection.
And what is the basis of the objection?
Beyond the scope.
And defense response?
Your Honor, this is cross-examination. I don't have to follow the scope of a direct.
So I am going to overrule the objection. So again, can you please restate the question?
Of course, you weren't able to find any useful information from any supposed inner circle members, were you?
Not much.
Thank you. No further questions.
And any redirect by this prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective, is decoding drug trafficking language similar to decoding messages in this case?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Detective. No further questions.
And any recross?
None, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. And then does the prosecution have any further witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, we have one more witness. And due to the slowdowns due to technology and some of my co-counsel having some slower Wi-Fi issues, we would like to ask for 3 additional minutes for this final witness, just to make sure that we can get through our questions.
And does the defense have any objection to that request?
No, Your Honor.
All right, I agree. The technology does make things a little bit slower. So proceed with your questioning of the, or Who is the witness?
The state would like to call Del Hubbard to the stand.
And Ms. Hubbard, can you please state your name or raise your hand? Could you, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hello, Ms. Hubbard. Can you please state your name and spell your last for the court?
My name is Del Hubbard, Hubbard.
And what did you do for a living?
I was the head groundskeeper for Barrington's Municipal Facilities Department.
And what sort of tasks do you perform in this job?
Well, I mostly take care of the area surrounding City Hall. It has lots of lawns and greenery surrounding most of it, so I do the upkeep on those. And since lots of people come through that area, it often faces litter and sometimes even vandalism.
And can you tell us more about that vandalism?
Yeah, in many cases, the Altenberry statue takes most of it.
And who is Altenberry?
He's the lumber pioneer that started up this town. There is some controversy surrounding him, though I'm not sure why.
And how is the vandalism dealt with?
Well, we clean it and keep it in fine condition with many specialized cleaning solutions. There was also some damage done throughout time, but recently got worse with the involvement of the DMIT organization.
And what do you know about DMIT?
I know that they don't like that the mayor is using taxpayer dollars to renovate the Altenberry statue.
And let's move on to the case. How are you involved?
I was hit with a hammer by Wesley Everett, who was a member of the DMIT organization.
And where and when did this incident take place?
In Pine County, Washington, in September of 2019.
And why was DMIT protesting?
They were very adamant about wanting the Altenberry statue removed.
And who else was there?
There were some out-of-town agitators whose movement was being spearheaded by Smithson and Everett.
And who is this Smithson that you are referring to?
I know that they spoke at some of the other DMIT events.
And were you present at the protest?
Yes, I was there just to survey the protest that was taking place, standing by in case I needed to take care of the statue or to clean up the mess that protesters can leave behind.
And what was the event like?
The crowd was pretty ramped up. There was some chanting, and soon enough, I believe it was Britt Smithson that handed Wesley Everett a sledgehammer.
And if I showed you an image of the sledgehammer, would you recognize it?
Yes.
I would like to now ask the bailiff to screen share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1. And I am now showing all parties what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1. Ms. Hubbard, do you recognize this?
I do.
What is it?
It is the sledgehammer that Wesley Everett used on the statue.
And how do you recognize it?
Because I saw them holding it.
Is it a true and accurate representation of the sledgehammer?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state offers Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection by defense?
No, Your Honor.
So Exhibit 1 will be admitted.
Permission to publish to the jury as well, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. And you may stop screen sharing, bailiff. And what happened once this sledgehammer appeared?
Well, I saw Wesley take a whack at the statue square in the chest, and then they hit it a second time, but this time on the statue's shoulder.
And did you at any point become involved?
Unfortunately, I did, yes.
And how were you involved?
Well, I moved in closer as things became progressively more violent. I wanted to protect the statue, so without even thinking, I began to climb onto the base of the statue. I wanted to try to stop Everett from further damaging the statue that I've worked so hard to preserve.
And what happened after you tried to stop Everett?
Well, as I was climbing up, I heard a loud crack and Barry's arm hit me hard on my left shoulder. It fractured my scapula and broke my collarbone in 3 places. It was awful.
And what happened after you were injured?
Well, Everett still had a firm grip on the sledgehammer when I was hit by a second object, which I believe to be the sledgehammer. It crashed into my skull, and after that, I just blacked out.
And how has this experience affected you?
Objection. Relevance.
The response to the objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This question goes to show the damage that has been done due to the actions of the DMIT organization.
And that's relevant to the charges, the criminal charges, in what way?
Because Miss Whitney is being accused of an assault, and so in this way, it is important to show what damage has been explicitly done.
Any response by defense?
As long, sorry, I rest.
I'm sorry, you what?
I take back my objection.
All right, so then the answer that has been given is remains in the record.
May I re-ask the question, Your Honor?
Yes.
How did this experience affect you?
I can certainly never do that job the same way again. All of the physical labor and upkeep that I did throughout my career, I can never do again. It was an essential part of my job. The emotional scarring of the traumatic brain impact is why I am filing for full disability. I don't believe I will ever fully recover from this incident.
I believe time has run out.
All right, so I will allow the witness to finish your sentence.
I don't believe I will ever be able to fully recover from this incident or ever again do the job that I love.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. And cross-examination, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Hubbard, on September 16th, 2019, you were working at the plaza.
Correct.
You worked there fairly often.
Yes.
In fact, this was your third gathering of that type that you had witnessed that summer.
Yes.
So there had been similar protests in the past, is that correct?
Not as violent as this one.
But, okay, not as violent. In fact, yeah, they had always been peaceful beforehand.
Correct.
But this gathering on the 16th, it was different, wasn't it?
Yes.
Miss Hubbard, you know who Wesley Everett is.
Yes.
The main speaker at this event was Everett, was it not?
I believe it was, yes.
You don't recall Everett speaking before the 16th, do you, Miss Hubbard?
No, I don't.
His speeches were trying to work people up, weren't they?
I think so.
So the one time the protests got violent, Everett made a speech.
Yes.
Now, during the protests, many people were holding phones and tablets.
Yeah.
And you saw many people listening to something on these devices, didn't you?
Yeah.
But it was too hard for you to understand clearly.
Yeah, there was too much going on.
You said it could have been more than one voice?
Probably, yes.
You don't know if you were just hearing feedback, do you, Miss Hubbard?
Not for sure.
The speakers at the rally, Smithson and Everett, you said, were extremely loud, correct?
Yes.
These speakers, Miss Hubbard, were so loud that you said you doubt if they or anyone else present could hear the voice or voices on the device.
Correct.
Now, switching focus, you're familiar with Tracy Whitney.
Yeah.
Throughout the rally, Whitney wasn't ever physically present, was he?
No.
The people you saw leading the event were Smithson and Everett, not Whitney, correct?
Correct.
Whitney didn't give any speeches, did he?
No.
Whitney didn't hand Everett the sledgehammer, did he?
No.
Whitney didn't hit the statue, did he?
No.
Whitney didn't hit you, did he?
No.
Whitney wasn't there at all, was he?
He wasn't.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect by the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Then the defense can call their next witness.
Your Honor, the state rests.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm confused on the witnesses. So yes, so at this time, the state rests?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and so there will be a 5-minute recess. My watch shows it's now 3:39, so let's say at 3:45 we should be returning. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and so is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please call your first witness.
Yes. We would like to call Mr. A. Lynn Strong to the stand.
And Mr. Strong, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, and you may proceed.
Would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is A. Lynn Strong.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Strong?
I'm a reporter for the Barrington Standard.
And why are you here today?
I'm here because I covered a demonstration in front of the Alton Berry statue on the 16th of September for the Barrington Standard.
Now, Mr. Strong, I want to move on and discuss this demonstration you were at. Why were you there?
Well, like I said, I was there for the Standard. I was there as both a reporter and a photographer, so I tried to take notes as well as photographs. Unfortunately, we can't afford to send both a photographer and a reporter, like separate people, to those kinds of events.
And what was happening at the protest?
Well, there were a couple DMIT members who gave speeches. It honestly was very similar to the protest that had happened earlier that year. It was a little loud. There were DMIT members, including Britt Smithson, giving, and of course Wesley Everett, giving speeches about why they thought that the city council should maybe go back on their decision to take down the Alton Berry statue.
And from what you could observe, how are these DMIT speakers behaving and acting?
Well,
Objection.
And what? I'm sorry?
Speculation.
And response by the defense?
Your Honor, this is based on Mr. Strong's rationally based perception of the speakers as he was there at the protest and could see them.
All right, so I am going to overrule the objection. Go ahead and answer the question.
Yes, I'll raise that question. From what you could observe, how are these DMIT speakers behaving and acting?
Well, from what I observed, all of the DMIT speakers were passionate but peaceful. They were definitely wanted the statue to come down, but they never advocated violence.
Now, Mr. Strong, do you know who Wesley Everett is?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Wesley Everett?
Well, I saw him at that 5th protest. As I mentioned before, he gave a couple of speeches.
And other than the speeches, what else did Everett do?
Well, she also shoved something into Britt Smithson during one of her speeches, then ran down to the statue of Alton Berry, jumped up onto it, and started hitting it with a sledgehammer.
Did any other DMIT member do this?
Nope, it's just Everett.
Were you able to see anybody's reaction to Everett?
Yes, I saw Britt Smithson's reaction.
How did Britt Smithson react?
Well,
Objection.
And what is the objection?
Speculation.
And response by defense?
Again, Your Honor, this is based on Mr. Strong's rationally based perception.
And so I am going to overrule the objection. Again, just caution the witness to answer what you observed only.
Yes, Your Honor, I'll re-ask that. From what you could observe, how did Britt Smithson react to Everett?
Well, I noticed that Britt Smithson was shaking, and even from a distance, I could tell that he was shocked.
Well, thank you, Mr. Strong, for your time here today, and no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examination by the prosecution, please.
Mr. Strong, how did you get into the newspaper business?
Well, when I graduated college, I felt like I really, really wanted to become a journalist. Journalism sort of runs in my blood. And so I applied for a job.
And my apologies. How did you get, my apologies, may I get my dog under control?
Yes. And I will direct the bailiffs not to, or to subtract that time, please. Should not be used against the defense. So go ahead. You had a objection, or I'm sorry, cross-examination? Ms. Brown?
Mr. Strong, you applied for your family's business, correct?
Well, I wouldn't say it was my family's business, but I did apply to be a part of the Barrington Standard.
And do you have your bachelor's in journalism?
No, I took a bachelor's in creative writing, and really, I think that it's really helped me being a journalist.
Do you have any credentials in this field?
Yes, like I said, I have a bachelor's in creative writing. I've took multiple courses on journalism. In my opinion, I'm a very good writer, and I've also been working on it for over 5 years.
You typically only report on non-exciting land use appeals and non-eventful things in your town, correct?
I'd say most of the stuff that I'm assigned to report
Yes
is
or no question, please.
yes.
So this incident on September 16th was something pretty eventful, correct?
Oh, yeah. There being a protest in front of City Hall in Barrington?
Yes or no, please, sir.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. In fact, you were trying hard to sell your paper and get your story noticed, correct?
I wouldn't say that, no.
You were trying so hard to point where
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Well, I think she needs to ask the full question first.
I would like to object to the past couple questions. They don't make any fact in this case more or less likely.
I'm going to allow, the questions have already been answered, so I'm going to overrule the objection and ask Ms. Brown to ask the next question, please.
you were trying so hard to the point where you were desperate and actually craving for your newspaper reports to have action, correct?
No, I definitely wanted to get a story noticed, like I said earlier, but I wouldn't say it was craving violent action. I'm not an evil person. I'm just a good-hearted reporter.
So you did want to get your story noticed?
Yeah, as all reporters do. I want to help support the standard.
That's just yes or no, sir.
Well, I would ask the prosecutor to allow the witness to answer the question
Yes,
fully.
Your Honor.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
While you were at the protest, you saw images of Tracy Whitney flash over the live stream more than once, correct?
Yes.
Britt Smithson told you that he had marching orders from Tracy Whitney, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, may I be heard?
Yes.
Your Honor, this is an acceptance to the hearsay rule because this is an admission by the party opponent.
And I'm sorry, the question again is what? That you asked?
Britt Smithson told you that he had marching orders from Tracy Whitney, correct?
All right, and response by defense?
Your Honor, Britt Smithson is not the party opponent in this case. Tracy Whitney is. Therefore, it's not a hearsay. It's not a hearsay exclusion. It's not applicable here.
Any response by the prosecution? Yes, the defense is saying that it's not a party opponent admission because it's not a party opponent. That the statement by Whitney, that's not the party opponent.
This is this is personal knowledge of this information and it is not being offered to the truth of the matter.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
Opposing counsel is asking Mr. Strong whether or not Britt Smithson said these things, and those statements are being offered to show that indeed Britt Smithson said, "I have my marching orders," therefore they're being offered for the truth.
All right. I am going to allow the witness to answer the question because the party opponent would be part of a co-conspiracy, is the theory of the prosecution. So I'm going to allow him to answer the question. Do you need the question repeated?
Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but may I just be heard quickly?
Yes.
Opposing counsel never pointed to whether or not that a specific exclusion of 801D could support their assertion of a party opponent. That was never mentioned in their objection response, or else I would have responded to it.
All right. Thank you. I've made my ruling, so let's proceed. Do you need to?
Would you like to answer the question, sir?
Sure.
Britt Smithson told you that he had marching orders from Tracy Whitney, correct?
No, he did not.
I'm going to ask you again. Britt Smithson told you he had marching orders from Tracy Whitney, correct?
Like I previously said, he did not.
Mr. Lynn, you initially stated that you saw someone give Wesley Everett the sledgehammer, correct?
Yes, I did. Or sorry, no, I did not. I'm not at all sure what you're mentioning right here. I'm a little bit confused as to what this question is about.
In your statement, you had said that Britt Smithson had marching orders from Tracy Whitney.
No, I did not say that.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Mr. Strong, was there a live stream at this demonstration you were at?
Yes, there was.
Did you watch it?
I tried to.
And when you were watching the broadcast, what did you see?
Well, I saw some images of Tracy Whitney pop up. However, I don't think it was really Tracy Whitney. The little clips looked computer generated and seemed like they were honestly created by some sort of robot or computer program.
Thank you, Mr. Strong. No further questions.
And any recross by the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. May the bailiff pull up his statement at page 48? I apologize. Page 49. Can you scroll down to the second to last paragraph, please? Mr. Strong, is this your statement?
Objection, Your Honor. Your
basis for the objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This it seems that opposing counsel is about to conduct an impeachment, but on page 49 there is nothing that is in the scope of my cross and my redirect, and recrosses need to stay within the scope of whatever was laid out by the redirect, and anything on page 49 is not in the scope of my redirect.
It's my understanding. If you have a response from the prosecution.
Yes. Impeachment on credibility can come at any time.
All right. I do see that, and looking in the rules, that the redirect recross is subject to scope objection. Allow argument on substantive objection. I am going to allow it because I do see that it's subject to scope objection, except if there's a substantive objection. So I believe that this would be substantive. So I'm going to allow the impeachment at this time.
Okay. I'm going to read this sentence. Please follow along with me. Smithson shook me off and said, "I have my marching orders." This is in your statement, correct?
Yes, it is, as I previously said.
And you took the statement "marching orders" to mean that Tracy Whitney had given instructions to limit access of information about their statue removal strategy, correct?
I did at the time. However, I believe that your question from earlier was whether or not Britt specifically told me that Tracy Whitney had given him instructions to limit information about marching orders. And you can clearly see in my affidavit that he did not.
Sir, but you initially denied that you were told that he was given marching orders.
I did not deny that. I merely said what I'm saying now, that Britt Smithson never explicitly told me that Tracy Whitney had given him marching orders to limit information about their proposal and dealings with the Alton Berry statue in Barryton.
Mr. Lynn, you initially stated that you saw someone give Wesley Everett the sledgehammer, correct?
No, I did not.
But then later you changed your testimony that you did not see someone give Wesley Everett the
Objection, Your Honor.
So please allow the prosecutor to fully ask the question.
Yes.
So your question to Mr. Strong is what?
Later you changed your testimony that you did not see someone give Wesley Everett the sledgehammer, correct?
No, I did not.
Wait. So there's an objection. And so what is the objection?
Your Honor, the objection is to scope. Perhaps you established that it was okay for her to, for opposing counsel to go over past statements from our direct in this impeachment, but opposing counsel wanted to address the whole marching orders thing, not the fact of whether or not Mr. Strong saw somebody hand Wesley Everett a sledgehammer. That was not what we were going to discuss in this recross.
And so I think this part of the recross is outside the scope. All right, so any other questions?
May I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Mr. Lynn, Britt Smithson told you that he had marching orders from Tracy Whitney, correct?
No, he did not, as I've previously gone over.
Objection.
And your objection is what?
Asked and answered.
And I will sustain that objection. Any other questions from the prosecution?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. And so at this time, then, does the defense have another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Mr. Smithson.
And Mr. Smithson, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Would you please state your name for the court?
Good afternoon. I am Britt Smithson.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Smithson?
I am the owner of Smithson Construction. We do commercial and housing developments all around Penn County. For example, you know that mini mall on 5th Street? We built that.
Mr. Smithson, let's talk about DMITE. How are you involved with DMITE?
I'm the leader of the local Barryton chapter of DMITE.
How did you get interested in DMITE's mission?
Well, a couple years ago, I started to look into my ancestors and their lives here in Pine County, and I found some really worrying information, specifically about Alton Berry. I found out he wasn't a very good guy. He exploited his workers, and he certainly shouldn't be commemorated in front of City Hall with the statue. And I was so concerned by this that I formed my own study group to investigate Pine County's history, and eventually we became a DMITE chapter.
How did your study group become a part of DMITE?
In 2019, I came across the DMITE website, and I was interested in its ideas of organization. And I thought that their methods would be a great way to take us from being just a study group and into more of an action-based direction. And so I looked it over with the group, and we together decided to officially become a DMITE chapter.
And as chapter head, could you describe the relationship between your local chapter and the larger DMITE organization?
Yes, we work like a McDonald's, like a fast food franchise, where we're associated with DMITE, but we act completely independently. This means that we alone form our own demonstrations and our own protests with little to no input from DMITE.
Mr. Smithson, do you know who Tracy Whitney is?
Yes, he's the leader of the overall DMITE organization.
Now, I want to move on and discuss Miss Everett. Are you familiar with Everett?
Yes, I am. She was once a DMITE member.
How did Everett first become a part of DMITE?
When we became an official DMITE chapter, we attracted tons of new members, and sadly, Miss Everett was one of them.
Did your DMITE branch ever meet with local government?
Yes, we held a meeting with Mayor Grimm to discuss the statute.
And did you include Everett in these meetings with Mayor Grimm?
No, our group decided that she wasn't the best fit for the meeting. Frankly, we were scared that something would occur that would jeopardize our goals that day, which would peacefully remove the statue.
Now, Mr. Smithson, let's move on and talk about September 16th. What happened on this day?
That day, we held our 5th protest of the summer in front of City Hall.
Could you tell me what you were doing before the demonstration?
Yes, I was at work that morning at a construction site on 3rd. It's an apartment building, and I spent my whole morning there, ordering my workers around, making sure we had the right kinds of floor tiles, and eventually, around midday, I left to go to the protest.
And what was your role at the demonstration?
I was one of its main organizers, and I was supposed to speak at the event, and I did take on the responsibility of live streaming the protest so other DMITE members could see what we were doing.
And what about Miss Everett? What was her role at the demonstration?
I didn't expect her to play a big role or anything, but I did ask her to hold my tablet while I was speaking so the live stream could continue to be broadcast.
And did Everett do anything else other than hold your tablet?
Yes, I didn't expect her to, but she did give quite a passionate speech. But it's a free country, so who was I to stop her?
What happened after her speech?
A little while later, I was giving my own speech when all of a sudden she jumped up, shoved the tablet right into my chest, and jumped onto the statue.
And what could you see as she made her way onto the statue's base?
I could see that she was holding something, a sledgehammer, my sledgehammer.
Why did you have a sledgehammer that day?
Well, as I touched on before, I was at work at a construction site, and when I go to work, I bring all my tools with me. And among these tools was that sledgehammer.
Now, do you have any idea how Wesley Everett got hands on your statue? On your sledgehammer?
No, I don't. I guess I certainly didn't give it to her.
And after you saw Wesley with the sledgehammer, what did you see?
The last thing I remember seeing was her holding the sledgehammer high above her head, and the rest was just such a shock to the system that it's all a blur.
And finally, earlier today, we've heard the term energetic tango be discussed. Have you ever heard this term?
Yes, I have.
What does this term mean?
It's a really funny nickname we give to Tracy Whitney. You see, a little while back, we found a video of him dancing at some sort of event, and he was a terrible, terrible dancer. To poke fun at this, we gave him the nickname Energetic Tango.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smithson, for your time here today, and no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. And any cross by the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, my name is Rebecca Sorg, and I will just be asking you a few questions today. So you created the Barryton branch of Debunking Myths story.
It was initially the Pine County Alt Historical Society, and eventually we became a DMITE chapter.
And you ran all those meetings?
Yes, mostly.
And you are familiar with Tracy Whitney?
Yes, I am.
And Mr. Whitney participated in meetings via video call from time to time, is that correct?
Yes, he did.
And you knew of the violent actions that had occurred in other branches of Debunking Myths story?
I heard one story about Australia, but that was it.
And you were a member of the so-called Inner Circle, is that correct?
That's one word for it, I guess.
And Everett attended some activities with the Inner Circle?
I think we had meetings after we had like after meetings. After our meetings, we had drinks, and Everett attended those maybe once or twice.
And you all communicated via an encrypted messaging system about the group's matters, is that correct?
I believe it was, yes.
And these messages were lost when you dropped your computer in the Barryton River?
Sadly, yes.
So there is no more evidence of these messages from you?
Not from my end, no.
And this messaging system needed an access code from you, correct?
Yes, it did.
And these messages were sent to Wesley Everett?
Pardon me, I don't understand the question.
These messages that you created were sent to Wesley Everett?
I sent messages to Wesley Everett. I don't know about the messages I created.
And some members, including yourself, have expressed disdain for Mayor Grimm from time to time?
Well, he does oppose our views on the statue, so we're not his biggest fan.
And some encrypted emails were sent to Miss Grimm, correct?
I believe some regular emails were sent to him, or to her.
And these emails were sent after she denied your official proposal?
Yes, they were.
And after this, phone calls were made to Miss Grimm's personal phone number?
I believe they might have been, yes.
Miss Whitney video conferenced in for some of the protests, is that correct?
I think yes, he did.
And you believe some of her protest techniques could only lead to violent ends?
One or two of them, that's correct.
And Miss Whitney was on a video call on the day of the incident, is that correct?
Pardon me, what incident?
The September 16th incident of the assault of Del Hubbard.
She was not on the video call.
On the day of the protest, she was not on a video call at any point?
Did you see Miss Everett or Miss Smithson? Or Mr.
Oh, excuse me, Miss Whitney, or Mr. Whitney.
Okay, Mr. Whitney was on the video call, yes.
And Mr. Whitney said something, is that correct?
I think so. I couldn't really tell what it was.
But he did say something, whether or not what was said was audible.
Yes, I heard a voice coming from his little screen.
And then Whitney inexplicably disappeared from the virtual scene?
I believe so, yes.
And you knew that Del Hubbard was injured with a sledgehammer?
Yes, I found out later.
And you had left the scene as well?
I left the scene, yes.
And you also run a construction company, is that correct?
I do, Mr. Construction.
And had a sledgehammer in the back of your truck on the day of the incident?
I did, that's correct.
And this is the same sledgehammer from Exhibit 1?
Yes, it is.
And the sledgehammer ended up in the hands of Wesley Everett, did it not?
Sadly, yes.
And was the sledgehammer that debilitatingly injured Del Hubbard, is that correct?
Yes, it was the one that Wesley Everett used to hit the statue and hit Del Hubbard.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Sorry, Your Honor, you're on mute.
Sorry, I've got things going on in the background. So any redirect by defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Smithson, were these inner circle meetings anything more than just a group to go get drinks and talk about your study group's matters?
No, they weren't. We just, after meetings, a couple of those guys, we went out, got drinks, continued our historical discussions, and that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Smithson. No further questions.
Any recross by the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any further witnesses by defense?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Professor Robin Hess to the stand.
And Ms. Hess, can you please state your name? Sorry, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And defense?
Hello, and can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Robin Hess.
Mr. Hess, what do you do for a living?
Well, for about 20 years now, I've been teaching legal and social studies at Fair Harbor College.
And Professor Hess, what's your expertise in that field?
Well, I have a bachelor's degree in sociology, but more importantly for today's case, I have a Juris Doctorate from the University of Puget Sound Law School.
How are you involved in today's case?
Well, I've been asked to provide my opinions on the factors a juror should consider when deciding whether the communications between Tracy Whitney and the DMITE movement are protected by the First Amendment.
And how did you prepare for today's case?
In preparation for today's case, I reviewed all of the exhibits that were available to me in evidence.
Professor Hess, what was the method you used to determine if Tracy Whitney's speech was protected?
Well, I used the Brandenburg test, which is commonly used in my field for this kind of thing.
And can you tell me what this Brandenburg test is used for?
The Brandenburg test is used to determine whether oral or written expressions violate the First Amendment. If a statement lacks intent, likelihood, or imminence, then it is protected by the First Amendment.
Professor Hess, can you go more in depth with these terms, starting with intent?
Well, intent means that the speech must be intended to incite lawless action.
And now moving on to imminence, can you clarify what this means?
Well, imminence means that the action must have a definite timeline. Proposing that something might happen in the future is not enough to lose the protection of the First Amendment.
And in the context of the Brandenburg test, what exactly does likelihood mean?
Likelihood means that the expression must have a high chance of causing imminent lawless action.
And how many of these conditions must be met to make speech not protected by the First Amendment?
Well, in order for a statement to lose its First Amendment protections, it must meet all three of these conditions.
Let's apply that test to some exhibits. Professor Hess, have you reviewed the letter signed by Whitney to Merrill Grimm?
Yes, I have.
May my co-counsel please display the previously admitted exhibit number 6. Now, Professor Hess, could you please read aloud the last paragraph in that letter?
Of course. We demand that you present this proposal to the City Council and seek their quick approval of our proposal. Immediate compliance will avoid any unpleasant consequences for Barryton, its facilities, and its employees. Your prompt attention to this matter is expected.
Now, Professor Hess, using the elements of the Brandenburg test, is this letter protected speech?
Yes, I would say it is.
Now, why?
As I just read, Tracy says in the letter, immediate compliance will avoid any unpleasant consequences. To be classified as an imminent action, there must be a date or time, which this statement lacks.
Professor Hess, have you reviewed the text between Wesley Everett and Tracy Whitney?
I've done that as well, yes.
I ask that my co-counsel please switch to the previously admitted exhibit number 5, page 62. Now, Professor Hess, could you read aloud that first text for me?
It states, ready to bring the hammer down tomorrow.
Professor Hess, would you say that this text is protected speech?
Again, yes, I would say it is.
Why?
Well, in my experience, words should normally be interpreted according to their common meaning, because in most cases, that's how the audience will process them. The text states, ready to bring the hammer down, which is a common idiom. Like I said, the audience will process this statement by acting on the common meaning, which is not to literally hit something with the hammer. To simplify this, in my opinion, the texts lack intent.
Professor Hess, have you reviewed statements on the DMITE website?
Yes, I have.
May my co-counsel please display exhibit number 2, the second page of exhibit number 2. Now, Professor Hess, I'll just have you read that. Scroll over, please. Thank you. Professor Hess, I'll have you read that first paragraph under the Our Mission section.
It says, we have one goal, one overriding purpose for our existence as an organization, the removal of all statues and monuments from public spaces, period. These objects of public veneration and adoration are a baby house made of blocks.
Thank you, Professor Hess. Now, in your expert opinion, are all of the statements on this website, including that paragraph you just read, protected speech?
Well, to reiterate what I said before, in order to be protected speech, the statements on this website would have to lack intent, likelihood, and/or imminence. In my expert opinion, the website is lacking all three. I mean, it's arguable that the contents of the website do not even call for imminent lawless action in the first place.
I'll have my co-counsel please display the exhibit number 3. Now, Professor Hess, in your expert opinion, is this poster protected speech?
Yes, I would say it is.
Why?
Well, because it's lacking a specific day or time, it's lacking imminence, in my opinion.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Any cross-examination by the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Mr. Hess.
Good evening.
You're serving as an expert witness.
Yes, I'm an expert witness.
You were hired and paid for by the defense.
Yes,
You are not providing your opinion on the statements broadcasted on September 16th, correct?
that's correct. Because Whitney denied that they existed.
Okay, and moving on to the statements you are willing to give your opinions on. So you used the Brandenburg test,
I did, yes.
and that includes 3 things: intent to cause lawless action, the action is imminent, and there is a likelihood that the imminent lawless action will occur, correct?
Yes, a state must have all 3 of those things in order to lose the protections of the First Amendment.
You reviewed all of the material for this case, right?
Yes, like I said on direct.
You reviewed emails?
Yes,
I'd like to ask the bailiff to screen share Exhibit 3. And you reviewed a poster, right?
yes, I did.
And is this the poster? This is the poster you reviewed.
Yes, that's the one that I reviewed.
And it says Altenberry statue taken down by any means necessary.
Yes, it says that.
And do you believe that the lack of location distinguishes the case?
Yes, I do.
And it says Barryton, Washington on this poster, doesn't it?
Yes, it does say that.
Is that not a location?
That is a location.
And I would like the bailiff to screen share Exhibit 4. And you also reviewed these emails, right?
Yes, they were in evidence, so I reviewed them.
And you reviewed these emails that were sent 2 days before the protest?
Yes, I did.
These emails appeared to be between Wesley and Whitney.
Yes, yes.
Wesley was frustrated with City Hall's lack of action on the statue.
Yeah, he was.
And he appeared to be losing faith in a nonviolent approach.
Yes, I believe that's what he said.
Wesley asked Whitney what the point of Monday was, right?
Yes, he did.
And in these emails, Tracy doesn't say anything about not being violent, right?
No, I don't believe he did.
But Whitney says to be ready to sacrifice yourself and others, right?
Yes.
And Whitney said, if we press our advantage aggressively, things may come down, correct?
Yes, he did.
And Wesley replied to that he won't lose his nerve when the time comes.
Yes, he did say that.
And the last prong of the test is the likelihood of lawless action, correct?
That's correct.
And in fact, on September 16th, lawless action did occur.
Sadly, yes.
When lawless action did occur, that part of the test was met, correct?
Yes, but it's lacking intent. In my
No
opinion.
further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect by the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Professor Hess, in your expert opinion, is the poster made by the DMITE website protected speech?
Yes, it is, because it's lacking a specific day or time.
And in your expert opinion, are the emails by Tracy Whitney protected and Wesley Everett protected speech?
Again, yes, I do believe that.
Thank you. No further questions.
Right. And any recross by the prosecution?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. And so that was the third witness. Any further witnesses by the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Tracy Whitney to the stand.
And Ms. Whitney, can you please state your, or I keep doing that. Will you please, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the court?
Hello, my name is Tracy Whitney.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Whitney?
Well, I used to be a part-time history professor, but that was a drag and pretty awful. So now I'm working full-time on my nonprofit organization, Debunking Myth Story.
What is Debunking Myth Story?
Debunking Myth Story, or DMITE, is a place where originally I posted my own articles on statues and how to remove them.
How do you run this organization?
Well, I'm the founder, but there's over 100 affiliates worldwide. Groups which are now called chapters reached out to me and to use my materials, and that's how we got here today. Each chapter has their own local leader.
Do you lead each of these chapters personally?
No, if I had to lead each chapter personally, I'd be writing in paperwork with all of the 100 affiliates. That's worse than teaching part-time history. That's why chapter leaders like Britt Smithson take care of whatever happens in that local area.
Do you ever communicate with these chapters?
I speak directly with the chapter leaders, but they can refer other members to me, so sometimes I'll speak to them as well.
And how do you talk to these chapter leaders?
Our staff team drops emails for me to make it easier to communicate between the chapters, and Britt Smithson chapter leaders, we use encrypted messaging for safety and privacy reasons. For communicating through chapters worldwide, globally, we use video conferences like how we're doing right now.
Mr. Whitney, you've heard a lot about the events of September 16th in 2019. Would you mind telling us where you were that day?
I was in my home in the Midwest doing some work.
What were you doing the night of the 16th?
Night of the 16th, I did some paperwork, as I said, and checked in on the protest that was going on in Georgia. Smithson had already set up a video live stream. I watched that live stream.
Were you leading this Barryton protest?
No, I didn't lead, but I had the ability to participate.
And did you participate?
No, I was mainly just spectating, but I have the ability to raise the volume on either sides.
Did you use this feature, being able to speak through your live stream on the protest at the 16th?
No, if I said anything during the protest, it was probably something like "good job" or other encouraging things like that.
Did you ever shout the phrase "energetic tango"?
No, I wouldn't use the phrase "energetic tango."
Why is that?
It's a silly nickname my friends came up for me about my dancing skills, which personally I think I danced pretty well, but I guess not. I'll probably take dancing lessons if not.
Are you aware of what happened at the Barryton protest?
Yes, sadly so, yes.
Did you intend for Everett to take the actions that he took?
No, I didn't intend for her to do anything like that, or I didn't expect her to do anything like that either, since she never spoke during the meetings or was mentioned by anyone in the conferences that we did online. I am very sorry for Del Hubbard.
How did you respond to Miss Everett's actions?
I told Smithson to hold a press conference to tell everyone that Everett was acting irrationally and to not condone any of her actions, since we do not condone property destruction or violence.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Any cross-examination by the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Whitney. You left teaching to start DMIT.
Could you repeat that?
You left teaching to start DMIT?
Yes, teaching part-time history is absolutely awful.
And even you believe your views can be seen as controversial?
Yes, my views are very controversial when I was teaching history, so that's why I like to keep myself safe.
And DMIT has a goal to take down statues?
Yes, because statues are a way of remembering the past without facing reality.
And you are the founder of DMIT?
Yes, it's my pride and joy. I worked really hard to create this organization.
And you self-publish articles and papers shared with DMIT?
Yes, once they join DMIT, they have access to the materials that I've written myself.
And initially, you were the only one who handled all the site inquiries?
Yes, but I've hired many staff members now.
Yeah, now you have a full-time staff.
Yeah.
So you oversee everything that is presented by your organization?
Could you repeat that?
So you don't oversee everything that is presented by your organization?
No, that's exactly why I hired staff members for.
And when you do involve yourself, you communicate via encrypt channels?
Yes, as you heard today, my work is very controversial, and since the government's always spying on you through your phone or your text messages, your Wi-Fi, I do that for my privacy, safety, and for my security.
Yes, thank you. And you trained all of the staff to use these channels?
Not all of them, no.
But most of them are trained.
They're trained to stay on DMIT's message of nonviolence and no property destruction.
And you're the one that started the encrypt channels?
Yes.
And the messages by you were lost in a system upgrade?
Yes, we upgraded our technology since we had the ability to do so.
And that happened shortly after the incident with Dale Hubbard?
Yes, I wasn't contacted about it, so it's nothing. I thought it was nothing important.
So a good portion of the messages between you and DMIT are lost forever?
I wouldn't say lost forever, but I don't want anyone looking into those private messages since I pay for them myself.
But they are lost?
Yes.
And you are aware of the incident that occurred on September 16th of 2019?
Yes, I'm aware. We've also heard more about it in court today.
And you were video conferencing on this day, correct?
Yes, I've watched several video conferences on that day.
And you disappeared from the scene before Dale Hubbard's injuries?
I'm not really sure what you mean.
Did you disappear after the statue was damaged?
I wouldn't really say disappear.
And you knew the statue was damaged though?
Yes, I found out after Britt Smithson told me more after the protest.
And it was damaged by members of your organization?
Yes, but I wasn't very aware of. Wesley Everett does not. We've cut all contact with Wesley Everett since she did exactly what we do not stand for.
But Wesley was a part of your organization?
Yes, she was part of the Barrington chapter.
And you did not care about damage done by your organization?
Yes, I couldn't care less about what happened to the statue, but I'm very sorry for Dale Hubbard.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect by the defense?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. And does this defense have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests.
All right, thank you. And so I think there was a request for a 5-minute recess before closing arguments. So let's keep it to 5 minutes. It's 4:35. So at 4:40, we'll get started with closing statements. All right, are the parties ready to proceed? Is the prosecution ready with their closing argument, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one second. Good afternoon, Your Honor and people of the jury. My name is Rebecca Sorg, and I'm a representative of the state in today's case. Based on what we have seen here today, it is evident that Tracy Whitney and their entire Debunking Myth Story organization had intended violence, destruction, and malice. Tracy Whitney was not simply a history buff that wanted to create change in the world, but a man with the intent to push their own agenda and violent methods of tearing down honored history. Tracy watched as the DMIT constituency danced her tango while he pulled their strings to orchestrate these events. As the state carries the burden of proof, we must demonstrate to you, Your Honor, and to the people of the jury that we have met our burden. My co-counsel and I have, in fact, overcome that burden. I'm now going to ask the bailiff to screen share the jury instructions, beginning with jury instruction number 8. Thank you. To convict of conspiracy to commit assault and malicious mischief, jury instruction number 8 states, the defendant agreed with one or more persons to engage in or cause the performance of conduct constituting either crime. As seen in messages reviewed by Detective Brandberg, Tracy encouraged and incited violence within the Barryton branch of Debunking Myth Story, with the intent to cause serious damage. We proved this to you today with the injuries that Del Hubbard received and the reputation of Alton Berry's legacy destroyed. As instruction number 9 states, a person is an accomplice if he or she either solicits, commands, encourages, or requests another person to commit the crime, or aids or agrees to aid another person in planning or committing the crime. Aid means all assistance, whether given by words, acts, encouragement, support, or presence. Once again, you can look at the messages sent by Tracy Whitney that include her inflammatory calls to action and plan to let no one stand in his way. By using phrases to manipulate innocent people into performing these actions, Tracy Whitney became a direct accomplice in the actions of others. To convict based on jury instruction number 6, evidence of substantial bodily harm and assault must be seen. Assault is an intentional touching or striking of another person with unlawful force. Del Hubbard's injuries are so substantial that she never again will be able to do her job, and as you heard from her today, her injuries are resulting in her filing for full disability. Tracy Whitney encouraged these acts of violence within her organization as she hid behind the truth of her actions and pulled the puppet strings as her minions did her bidding. Jury instruction number 13 states, substantial bodily harm means bodily injury that causes a fracture of any bodily part. Del Hubbard had a fractured scapula and a broken scapula in 3 places. The actions of the DMIT organization were forceful towards Ms. Hubbard and debilitating. She will deal with the aftermath of this incident for the rest of her life. To convict the defendant of malicious mischief in the 1st degree, jury instruction number 7 demonstrates that we must prove to you physical damage was done to the property of another. Mayor Grimm demonstrated to you today that the damage done to her great-grandfather's legacy, the Alton Berry statue, did in fact result in $10,000 worth of damage. The actions of DMIT not only destroyed a beloved monument, but the sense of community that citizens once felt in the town of Barryton. As subsection B states to convict, the defendant acting knowingly and maliciously. Detective Brandberg told you that in their professional and experienced opinion, that phrases such as energetic tango and tearing down the blockhouse were known calls to action. Tracy Whitney acted with malicious intent and did not plan on letting anyone stand in her way. Instruction number 10 asserts that Tracy's intent must be to annoy or injure. Del Hubbard's irreparable injuries demonstrate to you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that the organization Tracy created had intentionally promoted violence. We also heard how Mayor Grimm dealt with incessant harassment from the DMIT movement, despite simply wanting to perform her job as the proud mayor of Barryton. As jury instruction number 11 states, a person is reckless or acts recklessly when he or she knows of and disregards a substantial risk. Tracy acted recklessly as he disregarded all substantial risk that a wrongful act would occur. Despite the increase in violence at DMIT protests and the violence that had occurred in other branches, a gross deviation of conduct did occur with the brutal injury of Del Hubbard. Jury instruction number 11 also states that a person acts intentionally. Tracy continued to push for statue removal despite dangerous harassment and cruelty. Several witnesses demonstrated to you that these acts did in fact occur in the state of Washington. Through all of these details, Your Honor, and to the people of the jury, the state requests that you find Tracy Whitney guilty of malicious mischief in the first degree, criminal conspiracy, and assault in the second degree. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will hear the closing argument from defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Members of the jury, on September 16th, 2019, Wesley Everett picked up the cold, hard metal of that sledgehammer, and the statue of Alton Berry came tumbling down, injuring an innocent bystander, Del Hubbard. Today, the prosecution had the burden of proving that Tracy Whitney was guilty of criminal conspiracy, and that he was an accomplice in malicious mischief in the first degree and assault in the second degree. The prosecution had to prove these things beyond a reasonable doubt. They have not done so. If the prosecution cannot prove that Tracy Whitney was an accomplice, then Tracy Whitney cannot be held responsible for the damages to the statue or to the injuries of Del Hubbard. In order to prove that Tracy Whitney was an accomplice, the prosecution would have had to prove jury instruction number 9, that he solicited, commanded, or encouraged Wesley Everett to commit the crime, or that he aided or agreed to aid Wesley Everett in the planning or committing of the crime. The prosecution paints the picture that Wesley Everett was the puppet, and Whitney was his puppet master. The fact of the matter is, there are no strings being pulled here. Tracy Whitney did not command or encourage Wesley Everett to commit any crime, nor did he help or plan with Wesley Everett to commit these crimes. On September 16th, 2019, Wesley Everett went rogue. You've heard from Britt Smithson, who testified about Everett's extremist tendencies from the beginning, going on tangents during DMI meetings, to the point where DMI didn't even want to invite him to the meeting with Mayor Grimm because of his tendency to get extremely aggressive. Even then, he had a potential to go rogue. Now, focusing on the day of the protest, you just heard the prosecution say that Tracy Whitney appeared on a tablet screen and at full volume screamed a signal to Everett. But earlier, you heard from the prosecution witness, Del Hubbard, that it was much too loud to hear the voice or voices on the device. And throughout everyone's testimonies, Everett was the only person who acted upon that signal. Everett was the only person who hit the statue 3 times. Everett was the only person who acted violently that day. Everett went rogue. Britt Smithson, who Everett claims was his closest ally within this group, was shocked to see Everett climb over to the statue. In fact, Aileen Strong testified as though it took him totally by surprise. While Everett claims that Smithson and everyone in the inner circle knew this was taking place, Britt's surprise did not come out of nowhere. It was initiated by Everett going rogue. Now, we've heard a lot about the things that Tracy Whitney wrote and said, but keep in mind that everyone in America has the right to free speech. Robert Hess, an expert in the workings of the First Amendment, clarified this for us. He told us about the Brandenburg test, the standard for determining what constitutes free speech. In order for Whitney's statements to be considered free speech, there cannot be intent for imminent action. These actions cannot be imminent, and there cannot be a likelihood that those actions will occur. What we have seen over and over again throughout this case is that Whitney's words lacked that imminence. You can see this in exhibit number 3, the wanted posters, which you heard the prosecution say was proof that Whitney was dead set on creating violence. By any means necessary. By any means necessary does not have a given timeline or a date. These events could be taking place in 18 years or in 2 seconds. No imminence, no conspiracy. The same is true of exhibit number 4, the letter from Whitney to Merrill Grimm, proposing the removal of the Alton Berry statue. This letter is far from being a threat. It's lawful advocacy. And while it does mention consequences, if you use the Brandenburg test, you can clearly see that these comments are not imminent because they have no real timeline of when they would be occurring. No imminence, no conspiracy. This is also shown in Exhibit 2 on the DMI website. You just heard the prosecution say that the edited quotes from Thoreau were also proof of Whitney's state of mind. But once again, this is just a general statement with no given timeline. No imminence, no conspiracy. Gentlemen of the jury, much of the prosecution's case relies on Wesley Everett's testimony alone. But remember that Everett has pled guilty to 3 criminal charges, and his sentencing for those charges is still pending. The severity of those sentences will depend on this case. Jury instruction number 5 tells you that you should use great caution when considering any words from Wesley Everett. Members of the jury, the prosecution had a burden to meet. They needed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Whitney was part of a conspiracy, and acting through Wesley Everett, he intentionally damaged the statue of Alton Berry and assaulted Del Hubbard. Since they have failed to meet that burden, since they have failed to show that Tracy Whitney was an accomplice, they have not met that burden. We are asking you, the jury, to return a verdict of not guilty on all charges.
Thank you. And any rebuttal by the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. Britt Smithson, though originally had good intentions, soon became a minion for Tracy Whitney. Tracy Whitney, being the methodical person behind the curtain, orchestrated these events while placing the blame on those that served her so loyally. The defense claims that, Smithson gave in to Tracy's manipulation and ruined their own reputation in the process. As Aylin Strong demonstrated to you, the actions of the DEMA ended in destruction. There were pushing and shoving matches over a statue with a long respected history. The actions of DEMA were unprofessional and dangerous. Robin Hess, a professional in their field, demonstrated that there is value in free speech, however, not in speech that incites violence. This can be seen in the use of the Brandenburg test. Tracy constantly encouraged his team to push back against authority and do whatever they could to tear down statues they didn't personally agree with. The Brandenburg test also requires intent, imminent action, and likelihood of lawless action to convict. Intent was demonstrated through Tracy's emails, along with imminent action, as these emails were sent only 2 days prior to the assault of Del Hubbard, and Professor Hess himself admitted that this incident was an example of lawless action. Tracy continued to hide behind the actions of others as she pulled the strings all the while. Through Tracy's inflammatory speech and calls to action, DEMA was ready for destruction at any cost. Tracy Whitney was not merely a person with a love for history, but a malicious, destructive manipulator with ill intent. His calls to actions and mission statements are perfectly representative of the terror that DEMA rained down on the town of Barryton. Tracy's strings are simply connected through the ideals of plausible deniability. Tracy was only prepared to cut his strings and lose his control when things went awry. Tracy Whitney held all the power, but created a facade that blinded his followers from the real damage being done. Additionally, as opposing counsel like to point out several times, Tracy Whitney was a busy man, making it very easy for him to overlook the serious issues that continuously arose within his organization. However, when he did choose to present himself to those that admired him, his words were not simple sayings, but dangerous detonators. Through all of these details, Your Honor,
I'm hesitant to interrupt, but time is up.
I just have the last sentence.
All right, go ahead.
Through all of these details, Your Honor, and people of the jury, the state requests that you find Tracy Whitney guilty of malicious mischief in the first degree, criminal conspiracy, and assault in the second degree. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. And so it's going to take a couple of minutes for the raters to complete their assignment at this time. So I'll take a couple of minutes just to give you a couple of observations that I had. First of all, you all did a wonderful job.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Very quickly, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I believe that we are not permitted to give comments until all of the raters are done scoring their ballots.
I believe that I think that I can go ahead and make comments. That was my understanding, that I could comment while the raters were completing. Is that correct?
I believe you can give broad comments. However, specific comments on the portions of aspects of the case are not allowed until the raters have submitted their ballots, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. I will then just give some general comments about that there was a lot of information given to each of the parties to sift through in order to make their arguments and make their case. And I think that it was a tall task, and I appreciate that everyone was up to the task at this during this trial, this mock trial. And so if the raters could just give me some kind of signal when you're done, that's good. Thumbs up when you're done. Take your time, of course. I can say too that this was actually my first trial by Zoom. Our court has not even started back with the jury trials yet. We're supposed to have our first one next week, so I feel a little bit out of my elements because we've had our trials suspended for a year. So I appreciate everyone's patience with my stumbling along too. All right, so are the raters done with their work? Thank you. Great. All right, so I'm just going to make a couple of comments, and then I'm sure that the parties would like to hear from the raters. I thank you for the work that you did. Everyone was very well prepared. As I said, there's a lot of information given to prepare for this presentation. And I thought that each of the attorneys as well as the witnesses had good presence. Everyone was very articulate. I didn't have any trouble hearing anyone, which is sometimes more difficult when you're in a courtroom because the acoustics aren't always so good, but this was very well done. The one thing I would say is that on the objections, even if you think that the other side might be right in their objection, you still should make a response and let the judge decide. If you don't make a response, then it doesn't really give the judge an opportunity to make a ruling on an objection. So make something up. Just be sure that you say something. As far as the case is concerned, I think there was, my opinion would be that I'm not sure that the conspiracy was proven. And so probably if the parties were given more time to use all the information they were given, that might not be the case. The other comment I would make is that some of the arguments that were made were used evidence that wasn't necessarily in the record. So just something to be careful with when you want to use evidence. You want to make sure that it's something that has been admitted into evidence. And otherwise, really a great job by everyone. Really appreciate all your hard work. And so do the raters have something they'd like to say? Jay, want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to tell both teams, I thought that you did a really great job for this very difficult trial. I will say that back when I was in high school, I participated in this competition as a witness and know that there is a lot of time and effort that goes into preparing for this. It is such a monumental project. And luckily, being a witness, I was able to avoid having to learn hearsay in high school. So to all the attorneys in these teams who really tried to understand hearsay, I applaud you for doing that, because even in law school, it was very hard for me to understand. So honestly, well done in trying to do that, and especially in objection responses, trying to bring up responses of how certain hearsay statements could be brought in. I was very impressed by the myriad responses I heard from that. So I think that both teams should be really proud of themselves with how they performed. in regards to, I think my only, a couple of critiques, like for future times, if you're participating in this competition later on, I don't think there are more rounds for this competition this year, but in future years. One thing that I noticed was, I don't think I heard a really clear theme in the opening and closing statements for both teams. There might have been one there, but I couldn't really figure out what it was necessarily, other than just trying to prove the case. So I would say in the future, definitely try to develop a more clear theme that could be conveyed to the jury a little better. And in regards to objection practice, I think that I don't think this necessarily happened, but it was kind of getting there, where sometimes I've noticed that some attorneys in actual practice will object for the sake of objecting, and it is more used as a distraction tactic as opposed to not trying to get evidence out of the record. So I would say just to be careful of that line. Make sure when you're objecting that you are very clear as to why you were objecting, and not just to try to object for the sake of it. That all being said, I thought the roadmaps from both teams were very clear. There was a great step-by-step process of what I was going to hear in the trial, and then in closing what I did hear and how you kind of intertwine that with the witnesses. And that was very easy for me to follow, to see how you're proving the case. So well done to both of you.
Thank you. Do either of the other raters have anything to say? Any comments?
Actually, I have to be turned on to say anything. My name's Dave Wall. I'm the Chief Deputy Prosecutor in Klickitat County. I've been practicing criminal law for about 32 years. I did about 9 years at King County. I was Chief Deputy in Skagit. I prosecuted for the Tulalip tribe. I also did about 12 years as a defense attorney. I've tried hundreds of cases. The first thing I'd like to say is you guys had a tough fact pattern. The state's case under these facts was pretty tough. It's a tough road to hoe. I don't know if I would have charged some of it the way it was charged. That being said, you all did a great job, especially with the Zoom and all the other things. I wrote down, I don't know if you'll see them, as you guys went, I typed in kind of my comments as I was thinking them. So they're not all thought out, but if you want to contact me later and I can explain it more. The first thing is, a trial is telling a story and getting people to believe you. When you talk about the burdens of proof in the law, clear and convincing evidence beyond a preponderance of the evidence, or even beyond a reasonable doubt, what you're really talking about is a good story well told. You're trying to get the jury to believe your case. So you have to have a little bit of conviction in your belief. Now, in a criminal case, it's improper to say that you believe the guy's guilty, but you have to act like you believe they're guilty, or you shouldn't be there. Opening statements. You guys did good opening statements, but you don't want to promise too much. You don't know, as much as you think you do and as prepared as you're going to be, you don't know what your witnesses are actually going to say. They can go south on you quickly, and then you're standing there with egg on your face. So tell them what you believe the evidence is going to be, but if you try to mention witnesses and put words in their mouth, you're playing with fire.
Excuse me, Mr. Wall, I hate to interrupt because you're giving really good feedback. I've got another commitment that I've got to go to, so I'm going to sign off, and I will check in with the administrator. And so please continue with your comments. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Cross-examination. You want to be brief, brilliant, and be gone. You don't want to let the witness repeat what the witness said. You want to know what you're going to say and what you're going to get out of this person. And by letting them repeat what's happening, that's not going to do it. All you're doing is letting the jury hear it twice. objections. Just because it's objectionable doesn't always mean you want to object to things. You want to appear as, especially as a prosecutor, because that's kind of where I'm coming from most of the time. You want to appear as fair as possible, because you really, you're talking about what's going to happen to another human being. So you want to be as fair as you can. And so, if you're objecting because, I don't know, say the rules of this, it's going over time, or you've got some procedural objection, that really is not going to affect your case one way or the other. Well, you don't want to be perceived by the jury as trying to keep information away from them. They don't like objections because they think you're trying to prevent them from hearing something that now they really want to hear. So make sure you've got an objection and make sure it's a good one. Now, I've had judges look at me during the middle of some guy's testimony with raised eyebrows, and I said objection, and I didn't know why, and it was sustained. But as a general rule, you want to object when there's really a reason to object, and the jury's going to understand. The elements of the crime, you both did good talking about the instructions and the to convict instructions. The to convict instructions are going to define your whole case. And you could have spent a little more time, I thought, talking about reasonable doubt, talking about direct and circumstantial evidence. But you want to plan your case around your closing and the to convict instructions. With witnesses, some of those witnesses had real biases that could have been taken up, but some of those biases are not that apparent. This guy's waiting to be sentenced. Well, he's going to dance to the state's tune. But the fact that the guy that got hit with the sledgehammer has gone to the law to get redress for his injuries, that cuts both ways. He got hit with he didn't do anything. He got hit with a sledgehammer, and he'd like to hold everybody that hit him with a sledgehammer as liable. So you don't want to put negative connotations on purely innocent behavior. And it's the same with like the handing him the sledgehammer, or having the sledgehammer present in his truck. You might have 2 or 3 jurors that have a sledgehammer in the back of their truck. You just lost them. You just called them criminals for having a sledgehammer. That's not a good way to keep the jury there. The expert testimony, the Brandenburg test, I found that to be a little bit of a, you're calling a witness to tell the jury what to think. And he's not talking about medical conditions or ballistics or DNA. He's talking about what the law is. Well, the judge instructs on the law, and the jury finds the facts based upon the admissible evidence. So I would have been a little bit more hesitant. I probably would have put them on, but I wouldn't have gone into a lot of detail. And then in the closings, prosecutors want to sound reasonable, but you want to take them through the instructions, and I think you did a good job with that. Defense, your intent in this case was to put as many roadblocks between what happened and where your client was. I think you started doing that with the I can't remember his name, Britt, who brought the sledgehammer there. But you could have gone after him and laid a little bit more liability on him, or a little more guilt on him, to distract from your guy, because ultimately what you're trying to do is to show that the state hasn't proven the case against your client. And so you didn't have to defend the whole organization. But like I said, I think frankly the facts of the case were bad for the state, but you all did a great job, and a hell of a lot better than I'd have done when I was in high school. I can tell you that. So good luck in your future.
Raider Quinn, we can't hear you.
Mr. Quinn?
We can't hear you.
Nope, your mute is off, but we don't hear any sound.
You can always leave the meeting and come back to see if your audio will reconnect.
You're
Thank you.
Thank you so much.